I think we're live. Hey, what's up, dudes? Steve Marchena is back. We are rocking the acoustic guitars today.
Unplugged.
Unplugged, exactly. We're not even wearing headphones because we don't have to, because we're running acoustic guitars. So, welcome back.
Great to see you.
Great to see you. And you brought your acoustic.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about it. I like it. It's a Martin, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a Martin Auditorium.
Okay.
It's a very comfortable acoustic guitar to play. It's like a parlor model.
I was going to say, is it a parlor or is that considered a concert classic?
Yeah, this is a parlor.
That's a parlor, right.
The idea is they basically ripped off what Robert Johnson would have been playing.
Right,
yeah,
right,
yeah.
the parlor guitar, right, absolutely. Ebony?
I don't know. Looks it, I guess.
I think that is ebony. Yeah, I would say so. Rosewood?
You know, again, I just bought it and...
Looks like a spruce top, I would say, with rosewood back and sides.
You are a guitar detective.
And a mahogany neck. Looks like that to me. When did you get it? Tell us a little bit about it.
It was maybe 5 or 6 years ago. There was I have a friend from Berkeley, Al Jolson. Everybody knows Al Jolson at Berkeley, and he had or he still has a gig working at this company. I think it was called Sonic Implants.
I've heard of them.
Yeah, and what they want you to do. I brought my classical guitar in, and they'd have me play every note on the guitar at like 5 different velocities, like the loudest you can and the quietest you can, and no, play that again, there was a buzz or whatever, and then play all the chords. So it winds up being, I'm going to guess, like 60 hours of sampling everything that could be done on that guitar. And then I come back in the next week, and the guy's playing the keyboard, and I'm like, oh, that sounds strangely familiar. And then, wow, that's you playing every one of those notes, but now that you've sampled them so that you can play the keyboard, and you hear, depending on how hard you hit the key, it chooses which velocity that I had played it at. Anyway, Al calls me and says, do you have a steel string acoustic? Well, of course I did. I didn't have kind of a nice one. He's like, well, you know, we really want a Martin. And he told me what the gig paid, and I thought, okay, well, I'll use that budget to go buy a nice guitar. So that's why I bought this guitar. And, I mean, the whole idea, you know, it's sweeter than your typical, you know what I mean?
Right.
Steel string that a kid would start on.
It sounds great.
Thanks.
It's got a nice projection to it.
Thanks. It's not as, if I jam with a couple other acoustic guitarists unplugged and they're really strumming real loud, leads won't cut through then, you know. But the other thing I use it for a lot is recording. Whereas even if you're recording electric guitars or the loud thing in the mix, maybe you have a little, you know, it creates a little air on the recording. So I've used this quite a bit for that also.
Sure. When I was, you know, I have my Ovation that I paid like $100 for, but that's got a cracked bass. I actually like that guitar. I like the sound of that a lot, but you know, it's always sort of had its problems, and I never really had a decent acoustic. So a kid came into the music store, probably right around 1990, 1991, and he brought in a Guild D40.
Oh, nice.
But he had like these little brothers that were like bite marks.
Okay.
Like little kid bite marks, like where they were gnawing on the headstock, and the sides were all cracked, and it had a big crack. So they bought it for, I think $40 or $50 because it was in such rough shape.
Okay.
And then they put it in the same rough shape up on the wall for, I think, $150. And they said, if you want to take it, you can get it. We'll double our money. You can take it for $100.
Yeah, yeah.
I was like, sure, I'll take it. So I took it. And I brought it, I want to say, it might have been Rayburn Music.
Okay.
It was whoever we were using at the time to fix violins.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, yeah, he goes, I can fill these in. He goes, I have a method for filling cracks that happen. So we brought it to him, and he filled it in, and he got it going. And I love that Guild guitar. And like an idiot, I sold it for like $300, which I made a little bit of money off, because I think Rayburn only charged me about $75 or $80 to do the work.
Yeah.
You know, but it was a long time ago. I'm sure it'd be more money today. And I was like, so I needed the cash, and I sold it, and I thought it was a D25. It actually turned out to be a D40. And I remember I used to put new strings on it, and, you know, it would just sound so good. And I said, oh, geez, I really want a nice Guild. So I think I mentioned this to you the last time we had the video. My wife dared me to go buy a guitar.
Right.
So I said,
was it Vegas? Were you in Vegas?
No, we were gonna go to Vegas, and we were scheduled to leave on 9/11.
Yes.
And then 9/11 happened, and our flight got canceled along with everyone else's in America. And you know, we sat at home glued to our TV like everyone else in America, and it was a really bad time. And so, you know, there was all this talk about helping the economy and all this stuff, and she was like, "Listen, we had just had a house fall through." And we were just miserable. So I had the money, you know, it's like my bank account was the largest it's ever been in my life. And I was like, you know what, she's like, do it. Go out and go buy a guitar. And so I went out and I got, I wanted the was it the D55, right? Yeah. The top of the line Guild.
Yes, yeah.
So I go out to the Guitar Center out in Natick, and they only had the D55 with the sunburst top, and I wanted the natural top.
Okay, yeah.
And they were like, "Oh, I can't get it, whatever." And I think it was $2,200. And you know, it was nice, but he's like, you know, you should get a Taylor. Because Taylors were hot. Yeah. And I was like, you know, maybe I will. So now I'm going out there like every day, and I'm trying like a whole bunch of acoustics. And I wound up going to the one on Com Ave. Remember when now they're where BCN used to be on Boylston Street. Yeah. But for a long time they were over on Com Ave, right over the BU Bridge, or right before the BU Bridge. And so I go over there, and I'm trying out guitar after guitar after guitar. And I really narrowed it down in terms of sound between this guitar, this Larrivee. Yeah. Or a Taylor Jumbo. Okay. Which was, I gotta say, it was pretty nice. Yeah. But this was $1,500. Yeah. And the Taylor was $2,499. So it's $1,000 more to get the Taylor. So I'm going. Now, one thing I like about this is that it's a mahogany body. Yeah. And if you look at the back, there's like no split. It's like a solid piece of wood. I was like, you've got to be kidding me. It's all solid woods. It's all handmade. It has the bear claw front. I was like, I'm pretty sure those are imperfections. He's like, oh, no. That's highly desirable. Right. I'm like, oh, yeah, I don't know. And then what I really liked was I liked the flame maple binding. Yeah. And the binding here is what they call ivoroid, which is a type of plastic to make it look like ivory. So at least it's not, you know, it's got a little bit of grain to it. It doesn't look like that white plastic. And I have to say, when I picked up the Taylor had this super bright white plastic on the side and this super bright white binding. And it just didn't look that good to me compared to this. I thought this felt, you know, a little bit more handmade. It has the little silver inlay. That's like a real piece of silver that they you know, they route out and they inlay it and all this stuff. So I said, you know, for the money, I just think this Larrivee is, you know, it had a cutaway. It's got electronics in it. The Taylor, you know, had electronics, but didn't have the cutaway, so it's like if I wanted to do something up high, you know, it wasn't going to happen. So I was like, you know what, I'm just going to get the Larrivee. And I like the Larrivee, don't get me wrong. Yeah. I still wish I got that Guild D55. I mean, that's what I wanted to get.
But about the Taylor, you said it was a jumbo.
It was.
Now, those acoustic guitars, I feel like my classical guitar I had last time, there's only like a very specific position. Remember, I had to bring the chair in and everything. Right. Because the guitar is so big, you need a very specific circumstance in order to play it comfortably. Right. I kind of feel that same way about the jumbo steel string guitars. It's like you have to find a. Whereas
I thought this was more comfortable.
Right.
I really did, which is why I went for it. Yeah. And it's like I kept going back and forth. I really didn't narrow it down to those two, and I kept saying like, "Don't you have a Guild D55 anywhere?" Yeah. And they're like, "We don't." Yeah. And sure enough, like 3 months later, they had an acoustic blowout out at Natick where they brought all their Guilds. They stopped being a Guild dealer or something, and they brought them all to Natick. And I could have chose from like 7 different D55s, and they were like $17.99.
But you'd gotten this guitar.
I'd already got this guitar, and I was like, you know, what am I gonna do?
Yeah. It's meant to be.
It's meant to be.
I feel like guitars come into our lives for a reason.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah. When it's the guitar you're supposed to have.
I know. So. What's let me geez, am I out of tune here? I could be. Give me a high E. See how this was a little bit more in tune? That sounds pretty good. Yeah, not bad. D. I think I went a little sharp. And so I liked how bright it was. These strings are a touch old. I actually have a brand new set of strings for it, but I didn't have a chance to put them on over the weekend. And I figured if I did it this morning,
right, it would never
stay in tune. So I was like, just stick with these. And these are phosphor bronze, which I really like. Those look like 80-20s, and I really like 80-20s much better. Yeah. On a phosphor bronze on the Ovation, I think are perfect. Yeah. But on a regular acoustic, I don't like the phosphor. I like the 80-20, right. the regular gold-looking bronze.
Yeah,
Close enough. I'm in Kiss tuning.
Is it Paul Stanley singing that? I don't think he drinks. It's a cold gin time again.
I know.
Good for you to have cold gin.
Or is it Gene that never drank? One of them.
Gene doesn't. Yeah. I think basically the original lineup, the guys that were sober, the ones that were pretty relatively sober, they were just sex addicts or whatever.
Right.
But they're like,
well, did the Ace write cold gin?
I think he did. Did he sing it though? Maybe.
No. At that time, they wouldn't let him sing.
That's what I'm saying. So he wrote the song about this is what I do after the show. Right?
Well, yeah. So Gene sings it, right?
Okay.
It's a Gene song.
Yes. Yeah. Great riff.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
It is. And then now I can't think of it. D minor. And then D minor. D minor, F. If never I met you.
Yes. Right. Oh, that's great.
I just butchered it there, but you get the idea. You know what I also like is
I'm so glad you're going to drop D tuning right now. That's great.
Is
that damn good. Yeah. Of course I know that song. Yeah.
I love that riff.
That's got some reverse guitars in it that Steve recorded also.
And then he does this like, then it's like
That's a great song. Underrated song. Yeah,
I know. But so I really should play this guitar more.
Yeah.
I rarely play it because it's so fragile. I'm so worried about scratching it and cracking it and breaking it like I have all my other guitars that have just been beat to hell. So I leave it in the case like almost all the time.
Now you're saying this guitar as opposed to solid bodies you don't mind beating up.
For some reason, even though the solid bodies crack and break just as easily, I think it was just laying out $1,700 on a guitar. Right. I'm like, I am going to get a lifetime
right, exactly.
This guitar. So, I really baby the guitar. And as you can see, it is in like frigging mint condition. It really is. I mean, it's like showroom condition. So, I like the clear pick guard. You know what I'm saying? That is a pick guard. But they're like, we don't want our pick guards.
Oh, wow.
We don't want our pick guards to block the wood.
You know what they call it on a classical guitar? They call it like a tap plate. Is the idea? Like flamenco guitar players will use that because you do this type of tapping thing. The idea is that, wow, I didn't even see it. That's great.
Yeah, it's I do like this guitar.
Yeah.
It just
sounds great.
It was like at the time, we just lost that house, and it just felt like when we got this house that not that it was a compromise, because trust me, this neighborhood is really nice, and we're pretty happy to be here.
Yes.
And I think, but it was just sort of mourning the loss of that other house, because we couldn't, because, and then couldn't go to Vegas. It was just like one beat down after another. And then I was like, well, I'm going to go get a Guild D55. And they're like, oh, sorry, no Guild D55s. I'm like, wow, it's just like the universe is just not cooperating.
Exactly.
But I do like this guitar. And one thing I wish it had was, I love your large inlays. I really use inlays a lot to help me in my positioning, more so than the side inlays.
Okay.
And these are like micro dots, which,
Oh, you know what? I'm out of tune.
Cold basements. So, I know you brought some stuff.
Yes.
What did you bring? And let's talk about that a little bit.
All right, so the first thing, this is a funny story.
All right.
I was in the hospital about a year ago, and I was kind of sick, and I was kind of demanding guitars be brought to me. Right? Yes, exactly. Yes, Your Highness. Here's your guitars. So,
I know how that goes. When I broke my leg, I was in the hospital. You were a little longer than I was. I was only in for 8 days.
Yeah. That's a long hospital
trust
stay.
me.
They try to get you out of there
Day 3, I was like, I want to go home. I hate this place.
Well, I tried the first time. I had my classical guitar brought in, and I was still connected to tubes and stuff, and there was just no way. Like I was saying, you have to be in a specific position to really play that instrument right. So I found that the Martin with the smaller body and everything was just right for playing guitar. And as I was doing that, also, they had me on all the narcotics and everything. I'm like, when I get out of here, I'm going to put together a CD. I'm going to record some new pieces and whatever. And that's kind of like what my life was stopped. I was in the hospital, so I had to do something. I started planning for a CD. And meanwhile, my girlfriend, for whatever reason, was taking pictures of me playing guitar in the hospital.
Right.
And so anyway, this CD here, I think you saw this, where I'm playing this guitar.
Oh, right, and you're in the hospital bed, right?
Right. So I think what happened is you saw that and you said, "Oh, I bet you this steel string guitar on there, since I'm playing steel string guitar on the cover." Well, no, it's just. This is when the idea for the CD came up. So first of all, here you go, Steve. It's a little present for you. So we also want to
have to get you to sign this before you go.
Absolutely, classic guitar. And what's cool is that Classic Guitar Dreams. If you just Google it, nobody else named their album that yet.
Nice.
So you can get that.
Oh, that's awesome. Thanks. And I see you have stevemarchena.com here. That's a website?
Yes.
People can go there?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, cool. Awesome. Thank you.
Of course. So that brings us to this guitar and why I'm bringing it to you. You mentioned that to me. And the other thing that's going on is I'm recording a new hyperspace CD.
Right.
Which is, again, mostly electric guitar, but I'm in the stage right now where the bass and drums are done. And before I start recording the electric guitars, I'm adding some of this guitar, a little bit of the Ramirez, and some mandolins, and just sort of get that air on the track, so that then when I'm playing my solos, I have this, really full, airy sound.
Right.
The bass and drums sound fantastic.
Now, when I saw you play at the coffee shop.
Yes, that was Hyperspace.
That was Hyperspace.
Yes,
okay, all right.
Yeah.
That was because I know at the time you had another band called Superbug.
Yes.
And you had a few different ensembles going on. So I just want to make sure I'm remembering which band I saw you play.
Instrumental rock was Hyperspace.
Hyperspace, gotcha. Okay.
So anyway, I'm using this guitar for the new CD, and one of the things I'm experimenting with, as opposed, people will use this on the record and they'll play standard chords, and I love that, but there's other ways you can get that type of sound out of the guitar, maybe a little more unusual, a little cool. I like to do things a little bit differently, like the EBow or whatever. So I guess the thing is I'm wondering if your listeners all understand how a capo works, or if I should skip that, or just go over that.
I'm sure most of them would know that it's basically it's a changing of the nut, right?
Right,
so,
exactly.
Right.
So
it presses down.
If I went like, well, that's the fingering, but you use this, and I press that down right here. Here's the thing about capos. The tuning, I think, is the number one issue, because what people do is they put the capo on and they say, "Oh, the guitar's a little out of tune," and they start playing with this, and you've almost defeated the purpose because you put your guitar out of tune. So the thing that I'd work on is trying to, that's all right. Make sure that when you put it on, you don't misalign any of the strings. It's easy to do that.
Right.
Even if you put it too close to the fret or too much pressure on it, whatever it is.
Right.
I can play the same riff. So that's basically what a capo does.
And of course you can hear how more accurate that is
to the song,
to the
actual
song.
So it's important. If you want to play a song that was recorded with a capo and you want to be authentic, you want to actually use the capo.
We used to have a guy at the music store who, he was a bass player.
Yes.
But he was a monster on the acoustic.
Yes.
And he put a capo on the first fret all the time. He would tune down to E flat and just put a capo, or tune down to D and put a capo on the first or the second fret. He said it makes it easier to play.
Right.
He said because the action is just so much lower.
Yes.
He goes, I can't ever play without a capo.
Right.
And I was like, that's actually pretty bright.
Yeah.
that's actually brilliant.
The one thing I'd say about doing that, I think that once you have a capo on, if you bend strings, it's more difficult to get them to return to pitch. Yeah.
He wasn't a bender though. He was a like a finger picker.
Yes.
You know, and he had a bit of a country flair to his playing.
Yeah, that's great.
And he was his acoustic. When I got that Guild D40, he went through and showed me like 24,
finger picking.
well, yeah, all the I can't think of one of so.
Yeah. Nice. Awesome.
I can't believe I can remember that. But he would show me like all these acoustic tunes, and he would say like, "Listen, you got to get your acoustic chops together," and all this. Because I would sit there and I'm going like, and he goes, "That sounds awful. Never play that on a guitar around me ever again." And he goes, "Listen, I'm going to show you a bunch of acoustic songs."
Yeah.
And he really did. He really got my my head together with a whole bunch of. Like a...
Show? Is it Time in the Bottle?
Yeah, Time in the Bottle. If I could time in the bottle, the first thing that I'd like to do. Right.
That's great.
Yeah. Right, so Z.
That's awesome. That was in a movie. Wasn't there a movie about like a kid in a Bible bubble or something, and they played that?
It could have been
70s TV movie.
I was way into that. Was probably the first guy I was ever into, like musically, even before the Beatles. And because of Bad Leroy Brown.
Like Jim Croce?
Yeah, because Jim, and then I remember my dad going, "Hey, that guy we just bought the album for?"
Yeah.
I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "He's dead."
Oh, no.
Died in a plane crash last night. I was like, wow.
Wow.
Huh.
He really could have used some kind of the bottle, right?
I was like, that's quite tactful. Anyway.
So the capo.
The capo.
So here's the thing. Here's the basic trick that is going to get weirder and weirder as I show you a few different capos. But the basic idea is this. You went to drop D tuning earlier.
Right.
And I guess the idea there is that you could play an E chord and you get this deep bass note. But if you play a D chord in standard tuning, there's things you could do fretting another note, but you're not going to get as deep a bass note unless you retune your guitar.
Right.
But once you've retuned your guitar, now sort of the entire the relationship between the strings in standard tuning is changed, and then you kind of have to relearn some things to play. Like if you were going to play a G chord and drop D tuning, you'd be doing something like this, where you're reaching for that. So the idea is to get the basis of that sound
by putting a standard capo on the second fret. That is brilliant. I never even thought of that.
So now I can play a D chord.
That's brilliant.
Here's a couple of riffs that you'd expect that I'd have to retune the guitar for. play this chord right here, you're actually hearing the open string, the 2nd fret, and then the 13th fret. Well, nobody I know has a hand that can reach the 13th fret and the 2nd fret.
Right.
So you do this stuff by detuning. But if you detune...
Maybe Steve Vai.
Maybe Steve Vai. Yeah, actually, that's an easy stretch, right?
Or Paul Gilbert.
Paul Gilbert, exactly. But the thing that's cool is that then you've done that, and then still all your normal chords, you could be going... You can do everything that you do in standard tuning.
Right.
While you have that. I'll tell you what it's really cool for is sort of old-timey fisherman song, Irish music. I'll play you a riff that sort of takes advantage of it. It's something you'd expect that you'd have to do in drop D. This is a little bit of Farewell to Tar Waith. It's written for drop D guitar. So something fancy we'd expect to have to go to drop
and
D
I love that. It sounds very not Celtic, but
yeah, it's like Irish music. Celtic is right. Yeah. Celtic is right. So it gets weirder from there, because then we were holding down 5 strings. Now, this is a specialized capo. I got to tell you about a website. They don't give me any money. I'm not working for them, but it's called partialcapo.com. And there's this guy, Harvey Reed, and he really knows about this. It's like his thing. I came in with the EBO, and there's this guy that I looked at his stuff there, the Lenny Walker. That's what he does with his life, is the EBO. So I try to figure out, what does he do? What can I learn from him?
Sure.
Well, this guy's Harvey Reed, and what he does is these partial capos. So the first thing I got to do, you got something like open G or open A tuning.
Right.
Where you tune the D, G, and B strings. Yeah.
Right. So if you can't see this, the only strings that are being pressed by the capo are the D string, the G string, and the B string. The E, the A, and the E are all normal to the nut.
Right. So what it really means, figure there's 3 things that can affect the pitch of a string. There's the thickness of the string. The thicker the string, the lower the pitch. Tone. Right. The tension of the string, which when you do alternate tunings, that's what you're playing with. You're changing the tension of the string. But the third thing is the length of the string. And usually the way that we affect the length of the string is to put a finger down.
Right.
But you only have so many fingers. So once you're doing that, you can't maybe get over here with other fingers. Here it's like an extra hand. Right. I know he has one called the third hand capo. That's sort of what it's doing. So now I can play these strings. It's the really important thing. That sounds all right now, but whenever I put it on, there's a little adjusting thing back here with spring loaded, and you got to get it. If you get it right next to the nut, it can go sharp, and if you get too far away, not everything will ring. But I got lucky this time when I put that on. So again, it's really standard tuning, but the open strings, well, it sounds like open A.
Right.
And I got a little riff that takes advantage of that. It's a little Zeppelin, and it something where Jimmy Page had tuned to open G, and I'll play something a la that Led Zeppelin.
Okay.